Representative Jasmine Crockett just delivered one of the most devastating congressional testimonies in recent history, telling Attorney General Pam Bondi point blank that she's one of the worst attorney generals in history because she's prioritizing obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, and loyalty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution, specifically by covering up evidence of Donald Trump's extensive documented connections to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell in the official Epstein files. Crockett presented irrefutable facts. Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files, with more than 38,000 references across at least 5,000 documents. Epstein and Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. FBI investigative notes describe Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump, where Epstein bragged, "This is a good one." And the Trump administration's Department of Justice under Bondi's leadership is actively covering this up while simultaneously arresting journalists, obstructing murder investigations, and preparing to give Trump a constitutionally illegal $230 million payout. When Bondi tried to defend herself, she didn't address any of Crockett's documented evidence. She just listed random immigrant crime cases, a desperate deflection that exposed her complete inability to defend what's happening. Watch what happened, and I'll explain why Crockett's testimony might be the most important congressional moment of this entire administration.
Thank you. I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record the research that Representative Kamlager-Dove and I referenced concerning the threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, which the Department of Justice scrubbed from its website in September.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States.
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter, so let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "this is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind you,
Time
that
belongs
you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to
from
even acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank
bet.
you. General, did you have anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph, from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan, from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Thank you, General, and thank you for being here. And this has been quite a spectacle to observe today. I think it's sad. I ran for Congress because I thought we had serious problems in this country we wanted to try to fix together, and this performance today, not yours, General, but some of my colleagues, has not shored up my confidence that we are up to the task. You and I served together for 8 years when you were Attorney General of Florida and I in Kansas. You served professionally. I'm glad to be able to serve with you in these new roles, and I'm
What you just watched was a masterclass in congressional accountability. Jasmine Crockett didn't come to that Judiciary Committee hearing to make friends or score partisan points. She came with documented evidence of what might be the biggest cover-up in Department of Justice history. And Pam Bondi had absolutely no answer. Let's start with what Crockett established right at the beginning. She asked her colleague, Reppers Becca Balint, 3 simple moral questions. Is it wrong to rape children? Is it wrong to kill random citizen? S, is it wrong to enrich yourself as sitting president of the United States? S, basic morality, and Bondi couldn't even answer those questions. Why? Because her entire defense strategy depends on avoiding moral clarity and hiding behind legal technicalities. Then Crockett laid out her core accusation. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. Think about that statement. The Trump administration's Justice Department has arrested Don Lemon, arrested Georgia Fortson, raided journalists' homes, threatened prosecution against students protesting government actions, forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS, all while doing what exactly about the evidence that the president has extensive documented connections to Jeffrey Epstein and the trafficking and abuse of minors? The answer is nothing. Silence, cover-up. Then Crockett presented the smoking gun documents that make this completely undeniable. Donald Trump appears in the Epstein files more than any other person except Epstein himself. We're not talking about one or two mentions. We're talking about 38,000 references across 5,000 documents. That's not coincidence. That's documentation of a massive systematic involvement. But it gets worse. Crockett presented FBI investigative notes, official government documents describing specific incidents where Jeffrey Epstein transported a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump. And when Epstein introduced the young girl to Trump, Epstein bragged to Trump, "This is a good one." Let me be clear about what those notes mean. They document that Epstein, a known sex trafficker, was bringing trafficking victims to meet with Trump. That's not allegation. That's not speculation. That's what the FBI documented in official investigative files. Crockett also referenced another documented incident where Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted sex trafficker and Epstein's co-conspirator, presented a young girl to Trump, and Trump spent over 20 minutes apparently flirting with her, according to FBI notes. Now, Crockett was careful here. She said, "I'm not saying the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles." That's legally airtight. She's not making accusations beyond what the documents show. She's presenting documented facts and letting people draw their own conclusions. And those conclusions are terrifying. Then Crockett explained what makes this a criminal conspiracy. What's crazy about all of this is that this is a big cover-up, and this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. And she outlined the scope of the DOJ cover-up under Bondi's leadership. The murder cover-up. DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in investigations of federal agents who murdered American citizens, referring to the ICE killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good. The election cover-up, DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections. The bribery cover-up, federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe, and Bondi's agency killed the investigation. The constitutional violation. Bondi's agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payout, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. This isn't partisan rhetoric. It's constitutional law. The president cannot receive payments from federal agencies while in office, period. And Bondi's DOJ is preparing to violate that constitutional requirement. Then Crockett delivered the ultimate indictment. You will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, loyalty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. That's not name-calling. That's an accurate historical assessment. Pam Bondi is presiding over a Justice Department that is covering up evidence of presidential involvement with a sex trafficker, arresting journalists instead of prosecuting pedophiles, obstructing murder investigations of federal agents, stealing elections through voter data seizure, preparing illegal payments to the president, killing investigations into bribes taken by administration officials. Now, here's what's absolutely critical to understand. Bondi's response to these devastating documented accusations was to ignore them completely and list random immigrant crime cases. Texas from Cuba, convicted homicide, arson, weapon offense, convicted. Seal Joseph from Dominican Republic, Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khaled Khan from Afghanistan. She just read through a list of immigrants convicted of crimes, completely unrelated to the Epstein cover-up, the constitutional violations, the obstruction of murder investigations, or anything Crockett presented. It's a textbook deflection tactic. When you can't defend your actions, change the subject entirely. But the deflection itself is damning. If Bondi had any legitimate answer to Crockett's evidence, if there was any explanation for why the DOJ is covering up Trump's Epstein connections, she would have given it. Instead, she proved she has no answer. She proved that the only response available to her is to deflect, distract, and pretend the evidence doesn't exist. The full transcript of that hearing is now part of the official congressional record. Every accusation Crockett made is documented. Every piece of evidence is presented. And Attorney General Pam Bondi's response was to read a list of immigrant crimes instead of addressing any of it. That's not just failure, that's complicity. That's confirmation that the cover-up is real and that Bondi knows it's indefensible. I want everyone watching to understand what's actually happening here. The President of the United States has documented connections to a sex trafficker who transported victims to meet with him. The Attorney General is covering up that evidence while simultaneously arresting journalists, obstructing murder investigations, and preparing to violate the Constitution by giving the President illegal payments. This isn't politics, this is crime. This is corruption at the highest levels of government. And congressional Democrats like Jasmine Crockett are literally the only people in a position to expose it because the Justice Department under Bondi is actively participating in the cover-up. When Crockett concluded by saying, "You will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history," she was being generous. Because if the Epstein files contain evidence of presidential involvement with sex trafficking and the attorney general is covering it up instead of investigating, then Pam Bondi isn't just a bad attorney general. She's potentially criminally complicit in obstruction of justice related to the sexual abuse of minors. The bottom line is this. Jasmine Crockett presented documented evidence from official FBI files showing that Donald Trump has extensive connections to Jeffrey Epstein, that Epstein transported trafficking victims to meet with Trump, that Ghislaine Maxwell presented young girls to Trump. She showed that Attorney General Pam Bondi's Justice Department is actively covering this up while arresting journalists, obstructing murder investigations, and preparing to violate the Constitution. When Bondi tried to defend herself, she couldn't. She had no answer. So she deflected by listing immigrant crime cases, a desperate attempt to change the subject because the original subject is indefensible. Crockett was right. Bondi will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history because she prioritized loyalty to a president with documented connections to a sex trafficker over loyalty to justice, to the Constitution, and to the American people. One cover-up at a time, one obstruction at a time, one constitutional violation at a time. That's how you get a justice system that serves the powerful instead of protecting the vulnerable. And Jasmine Crockett made that crystal clear to everyone watching. If you believe this testimony needs to be shared widely, please like and subscribe. Turn on notifications for videos exposing government corruption. Share this with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening at the Department of Justice. The mainstream media won't cover this honestly, so we have to. Thanks for watching. Bye.